as I mentioned, about productivity paradox, because technology is reshaping governance from data analytics to artificial intelligence. Because its purpose is to make life simpler and service more humane. But if you read the issue of productivity paradox, it does not necessarily result that way. Sometimes it becomes more complex. You don't add mentoring new talent while adapting to new tools and ways of working. I've challenged, for example, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because the traditional notion of how we look at diplomacy has shifted to a focus on trade and investments. So these shifts would require the civil service to also retrain and expose new talents, new officers to new dictates and new demands. So I must commend again, for example, the Foreign Ministry for grasping this and taking immediate action to ensure that our young diplomats refocus, not necessarily refocus, but then extend the focus beyond just diplomacy to the issues affecting trade, investment, or the economy. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, across ASEAN, our administration are reforming with the same purpose. Our shared task is deepen trust, interoperability, and capability so that citizens everywhere in our region experience government that is connected, secure, and humane. None of us can face climate shocks, cyber risks, or health crises alone. Our resilience will depend on how well our system learn from each other. Trust, interoperability, and capability form new horizons of public service. They require discipline, clear standards, open yet protected data, and cooperation that crosses borders and bureaucracies alike. So let us leave this conference with a renewed commitment to reform boldly, cooperate deeply, and serve with integrity. If we do so, inshallah, history will remember us as architects of a just, inclusive, and sustainable ASEAN. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Terima kasih. Thank you again to Tunku Zafrul, Sido and the Deputy Minister, of course Bloomberg, and CIMB, of course. Thank you. CIMB have little choice when Zafrul is involved. But thank you very much. As mentioned by Zafrul, been a long day, but it's worth the effort. We had, I should say, excellent or fruitful meeting with President Donald Trump. We got him to dance initially so that things cool off a bit better. I was fully briefed, and the exchanges have been useful. I mean, the ride with him in the car allowed me to raise some very, very pertinent questions close to our heart on multilateralism, or the need to maintain centrality of ASEAN, particularly Malaysia, to engage with the West and the East, to go strong, formidable relations in terms of investment and trade with the United States of America. At the same time, forge a very strong new alliance with China. Oh, mind you, don't envy me on this. But at least I could share with him, frankly, some of these issues. And then to explain to him why the issue, for example, Gaza is very painful and affecting the ramifications throughout the world, and particularly more so in this region. And also gave him the opportunity to articulate his vision, his views. But finally, during the bilateral meeting between Malaysia and President Donald Trump, went very well. We had, I think, Zafrul mentioned this today, that we managed to resolve most of the issues. We told him that, very difficult for an independent country like Malaysia, with, of course, much weaker opposition, 1/3 in parliament, but still very vociferous, very strong in their views, to be seen to be submitting, compliant to other powers. So I have assured him that our fundamental focus is, of course, trade and investments. And I mentioned the Bloomberg Business Summit. Yeah. And he said, why? I said, I don't know, you ask Bloomberg. And for Malaysia, this is more pertinent. And I took, of course, the opportunity to explain Malaysia's position. The statistics, economic figures, of course, Zafrul has alluded to briefly. But I think for Malaysia, it's one of the most politically stable countries, certainly so in the region. And I don't know what you call, if 2/3 majority in parliament should be stable. In fact, when I was in the opposition, I would never believe that why should the government have 2/3 majority. But that was when I was in the opposition. Now I realize if you're stable and there's clarity in terms of policies, a clear direction, you talk about semiconductor strategy, you talk about new industrial master plan, you talk about energy transition or digital transformation, there's clarity of these policies. Once there's clarity, it's easy for policymakers, easy for the investors, both domestic and foreign investors. But we have to steer and be focused. And our initial challenge took over as Prime Minister, the effectiveness, the effective execution of policies, because people are not familiar with the style. There is whether we need to have commissions for the elites, we call it commissions. For the poorer segment we call it corruption. So this with the corruption and commission, to me, is damn bloody same thing. But still, we need to correct these misperceptions and to ensure that we focus also on governance.
most economists, most elites want to talk about economic fundamentals. But to me, without good governance, economic fundamentals don't work because you do not serve the country and the community. So that has been our challenge in the last few years, and we have seen the results initially, both in terms of growth, in terms of even equity, the principles of equity. I'm very passionate about these views because I cannot rationalize. I mean, I think morally unacceptable for any government and political elite to accept gross inequities, grinding poverty in the midst of plenty. So there must be clear policy. Even then, we do shift from the conventional, traditional notion of a new economic policy where we place too much importance to racial composition to a policy based on needs. Yes, affirmative action, but based on needs. Poverty means poverty. The need for social mobility means to deal with those who need the necessary